Good morning, everyone. We just had some great keynotes, and we will follow up with this panel about the rise of the OSPOs, open source program offices within grid operators. I do have some experts here with me with a lot of experience and knowledge and passion. And we'll go through several topics. I will be hosting the panel, moderating the panel. My name is Sam, and I'm a communication advisor for our OSPO team at Alliander. I want to ask you guys whether you could introduce yourself and maybe just short answer in why your organization decided to rise an OSPO.
I think I already introduced my keynote. For those who are not there, I'm Jonas from the Bogaard. I work at Alliander's open source program office. So Alliander is the distribution system operator in the Netherlands. And one of the reasons we started the OSPO in 2020 was that when we launched our open source strategy in 2019, where we really saw open source. Oh, it's going to start again. Sorry. Sorry for that.
There will be other beeps.
Yeah. Sorry for that. So when we started the open source strategy in 2019, which was motivated by new digitalization strategy, where we saw that to speed up innovation and the scale we want to do the digital transformation at Alliander, collaboration and co-creation was an important topic. And that was also one of the motivations for the open source strategy in 2019 to set up, hey, open source is one of the ways. You have multiple ways to organize collaboration in the digital ecosystem, but open source is one of the ways to organize that. Which was great that we had this first version of the open source strategy in place that emphasized the importance of open source in collaboration, and also put the first cornerstone for our open source first policies in terms of how we source software, but also think about it in terms of when we build software to see if it can do with others. But after launching our open source strategy in 2019, we also came to the understanding that open source is complex. It's complex. It contains many different aspects. It's about, okay, if you want to, it's about adopting open source. You have to consider licenses. You have to consider risk. If you want to contribute to open source, there are all kind of questions asked in the organization about, hey, are we allowed to do it? And if we are allowed to do it, how do we organize it? And if you want to bring an intro project to open source, is okay, how are we going to do that? What legal steps we need to take, or what technical steps do we take? So we came to the understanding of, okay, we also needed a group of people in our organization to build up knowledge around the topic of open source and really start building up this open source capability. And that was the kickoff for the open source program office at Alliander in 2020.
Hello. As you could probably see, I'm not Moïse. Moïse is sick today, so I'm replacing him. I'm Sebastian. I'm a R&D manager at the Research Center for Hydro-Québec. I'm also head of the OSPO with Moïse. And basically what brought us to found an OSPO was with the counseling of Alliander and RT, it's like, oh, you need to do an OSPO, to really start your open source. And we're at the point where with the energy transition, we're looking at the IT costs, and they kept exploding every year, and we have to control the costs. So we said, okay, let's look around what's the best way to cut costs and maybe work with other utilities and improve on that. And so that's where we went with the open source and founded the OSPO. And it's pretty young. We started the OSPO officially like in end of 2023. So.
Hello, I'm Boris from RT. I'm leading the open source program office at RT. And fun fact, the first LFO summit in 2019 in Edinburgh, there were less people in this place. So I'm very happy to see that the conversion is now unbelievable. So happy to be here with you. What triggered the OSPO creation inside RT was the first release of open source, began before the LF Energy. It was only for transparency purpose. We pushed the code for the Antares simulator, which is the the model we use for enlightening the future of the energy mix for our political for the government. So for transparency purpose, we decided to release this code, and then we met Shuli Goodman and bootstrapped this LF Energy project. And at this time, we did a study tour in San Francisco in the headquarters of the Linux Foundation. And one of the first piece of the puzzle was to manage the next future, which is the contribution to open source, where you're at risk, where you need to do things very professionally, very methodologically. So we built the OSPO for that.
Hi, I'm Seb. I'm leading the OSPO at E.On. And all these three guys are working for a single grid operator. And E.On has 12 grid operators and then energy retail on top. So my journey is quite different than theirs. But the sense is the same. So we see that we need to digitalize a lot in the grid, but also in retail. We do a lot of like central platform development now, which we didn't have before. And part of that is like this DevOps transformation to actually understand, okay, if we do software, we need knowledgeable people that stay within the company. And part of that transformation was my team lead who hired me that said, okay, we need a certain set of what we call principal engineers, and I'm part of that team to kind of bootstrap that transformation. But I'm not an engineer, and that was on purpose. So they explicitly looked for community management, but also for like OSPO person, because it was important to have someone who could steer that like open source stuff pragmatically, because like before it was like mix and match. There was no guidelines on anything, like no policies, no one you could even ask. Like, am I allowed to use that? No one could answer that. And that's what I'm there for now at E.On. Like, answer that kind of question, taking a strategic approach to those kind of questions, and help the company basically to find their way into open source.
Thank you. Okay, we'll start on the topic culture, building the OSPO, I'm sorry. So Boris, what were your first concrete steps you took to launch your OSPO at RT France? Were there any key allies, or were there maybe some skeptics within your organization?
Back from the study tour, the first mission was to set up the OSPO. We had a lot of work already done by other industries, like vehicles and telecommunication, that was very early adopters of the open source compared to the energy. So we had this to-do group documentation. We set up the OSPO based on that documentation, and from the legal perspective, we needed to make a consultancy from a French legal cabinet. And they gave us advice for choosing our licenses, policy, etc. So we injected in simple internal wiki pages, sharing for all the developers that are connected, and we pretty know well these guys from the OSPO point of view. So we were in contact with a very small group of people, so it bootstrapped very simple things, wiki pages, and a Teams channel for the open source in the company. So it's very simple to bootstrap, and then you mature. You do iterative work, and now if you think to build an OSPO, you are very lucky because everyone here will share with you everything we have. So it will be very easy for you to go at a y-intercept, which is really better than us. So feel free to contact us. I'm pretty sure we will be able to give you a lot of information. And then for the key allies, if you were at the panel session where Lucien mentioned, we were very lucky because the C-level was already connected with us, because for this transparency releasing of the code of Antares Simulator, so the C-level was already convinced. And they are no more than convinced, so they are sponsors, so it's a very lucky journey for us. And for the skeptics, we always have a lot, even if we have the CEO, which is a better sponsor for us. And it's fully understandable, because the needs for the grid operators is for yesterday. So when you need to release something, you need to make this cultural change that Mirko mentioned. And from my point of view, for skepticals, in order to tackle this, is to accept that they are skeptic and to try to demonstrate that their habits is to pedal on a bike looking the handlebar. And we need all to draw a bow and to release an arrow. And to draw the bow, you need to take time to define what is your strategy. So it's something that enterprise architects perfectly know, but the open source is really a way to speed up. So we need to do this demonstration, and then we'll have less skepticals.
Maybe I think, and one thing two things you mentioned, which I think it's very important to address. So the one thing is, you start with a small wiki page. I think I just talking to Sven, which starts the OSPO at Elias. That's already really helpful. It's just being that knowledge center for open source and bringing all that knowledge. Often there's also already quite a lot of knowledge in your organization about open source. The hard part is it's not centralized yet. So bringing that together and also bringing that together in a wiki is a really easy and essential first step. And the second thing I want to address is it's okay to start small. You address many things and you think, wow, that's a lot of things to think about. Yes, it is. But you don't have to tackle it all at once. You can start and focus on a few things and build out from there.
Great tips, thanks. Sorry, Sebastian. I will just call you Sebastian. What was your approach into internal alignments such as legal, finance, management, etc.?
Well, for us, when we did an official press release, when we became member of the LFE, it went as maybe a lighthouse for the business itself, where people who are interested in the open source in the business went and came and contact us. So we were very lucky to find some people in the legal department, for example, that were very inclined to do open source and work with us and address all those issues we might have internally. So we really worked as a group instead of having only one person as an OSPO, because we weren't able to secure one person say, okay, you're going to be full-time OSPO. So what we did, we split the load between several people, and then we had like internal ambassadors for the open source. So that did help a lot.
Perfect, nice. Jonas, we just heard that there are a lot of skeptics, of course. What was kind of the key turning argument that you used within Alliander to make sure that you were able to start an OSPO?
So in my intro, I already mentioned that we started the new digitalization strategy in, I think it was 2018, was for us an important trigger point. It especially because collaboration wasn't part and theme in that strategy, which was also the first step to the open source strategy, and then also the first step to the OSPO, at least bringing a set of people together. But when we started with this small group, the real journey started. So a few things what we focused on in the beginning was first building up the internal open source community. I just mentioned there is already quite some open source knowledge in our organization. So bringing those people together was very helpful, because that gives you a broader community which can help you raise awareness for open source in the company. And speaking of raising awareness, I think that's also one of the most important things we put a lot of effort in the beginning. It's communication. It's a lot about open source. Although we had an open source strategy for most developers, most teams, product managers, open source was new and unknown. What does it mean? What does it mean for me? How does it work? So making people aware of the concept of open source, but also making them aware that we have a team, an OSPO in Alliander, where you can go to and ask questions about it. So I think creating the awareness was an important trigger to get broader buy-in across the organizations, and this which is important, and bringing the ambassadors. And the third thing is I think success ambition is one, but success sells best. So having also start doing it. So we started our first open source project, brought up open source to really showcase what open source is, how it works, and also learn down the way. Yes, we make mistakes, but that's okay. That's where the learning starts.
Great. So I saw you nodding when Jonas started about success as well. How do you define success for your OSPO? Are there any overachieving goals?
Well, the overachieving goal is like becoming an open source company, for whatever that means for your company. Or at E.On, like, again, I'd like to do that kind of open source software in the grid. Like, that's my ambition. That's why I started at E.On. I know that's going to be a hard challenge, even harder than what these people do, because, like, again, we are several grid operators, several energy retail companies. But yeah, like, success is, you can't really measure success. It's more about, like, the small things that you can see and where you make an impact. And it starts with, finding people who celebrate you, or who are thankful that you're there. Like, this was the success that I had. Like, we have open source contributions now in CNCF projects. And, like, within a year of me working at E.On, and before that was unthinkable. Like, I've met people in the company that tried for years to open source patches, and they couldn't. And then I came and helped them. And, like, this was a really successful starting point for me. And then you have basically lighthouses. Like, I can point then other people, middle managers, engineers to, well, we've done that before. Come to me, we help you. And then you start that kind of pyramid scheme in the company. And you have to start somewhere to have success.
Great, thank you. Sebastian, the utility environment is traditionally kind of risk averse. How do you manage and how do you shift that culture towards open source?
Well, to be honest, it's still a work in progress. But every day is a little fight we're going through. And when we started, we went with legal first, and then it gave us a little opportunity to address some cybersecurity risk. And because for sure, and being on the research side, for my side, it's way easier for me to start some projects. So Moïse is more on the corporate side, and he's helping to find out those ways, correct, where we can go to avoid those issues. But we did kickstart with the research, and now we're trying to bring it to the OT side. You know. It's a work in progress still, though.
I see everyone nodding, so it's something they recognize. No.
Yeah, like, just to add, like, we're all in this industry, and we all know that it's not just only risk averse, but also averse to change. And there are reasons for that. Like, there's, like, in the end, there's life at danger in what we do. And, like, that's the reason why we are risk averse. And we should keep that in our mind. But there's also, like, an urge to be more efficient, to make that energy transition work. And, like, I guess we all agree, otherwise we wouldn't be in the OSPO, that, like, the only way to actually achieve that is collaboration, is open source. Like, we need to move faster as an industry. And, well, luckily enough, the software industry gave us a vehicle for that, like, 40 years ago. We should just use it. And, yeah, that's going to be hard. But, like, everyone else, like you mentioned, the telecommunications industry, they've been in that journey for 10 or 15 years now. And we just start out. But we're on a good path.
That's great, and a path that we can learn a lot from. So another topic that we heard quite some things about the past days is cybersecurity and digital sovereignty. So a few questions about that. I will start with you, Boris. What role does open source play in your organization approach to digital sovereignty?
In our organization and for the entire world, the place for open source in the question of managing your dependency for software needs is central. It's kind of obvious, but once again, like skepticals we mentioned just before, we need to demonstrate that. for the information, in France, the government, even if it's quite unstable this time, asked us for working on a resiliency indicator. And inside this indicator, we are assessing if our data, our infrastructure, our workforce, from a functional, a technical point of view, is well managed. Inside your company is the best, on-prem is the best, etc. for the criteria. But the other question is from the software perspective. What is your strategy? And when you are RT and you are kind of a designer of this new indicator from the government, and when you say, hey, guess what? We have an OSPO, we have an open source strategy for the most critical piece of software. Because in France, you have a lot of companies that have a strategy for open sourcing IT for IT stuffs. But we are at the highest maturity level in France for putting critical things. And one thing I want to share with you is when we're speaking about sovereignty, we're speaking about a very theoretical exercise. Thinking exercise, because if you take in account the substrate of internet, for example the DNS, for example the IP allocation of your telecommunication company, for all the people and for all the companies, there is one trigger that can shut it off. So we're only thinking about the upper layer. We consider that the substrate is a constant working.
Someone who wants to add something?
That's a good point about the sovereignty and everything. And another point you said about being more focused about the energy sector and not IT for IT. And that's where I wanted to bring the OSPO and the open source first, because our upper management is always afraid to turn into an IT box. So we want to make sure, reassure them, no, we're staying in the energy sector, don't worry about it. And for the sovereignty, I always found the European were way more aware of that. But I would say since maybe 2024, thanks to our southern neighbor, we're way more aware of that right now. So.
Great. And how do you address cybersecurity concerns when adopting or contributing, of course, to open source?
Tough question. Right now, basically, we have one project which we started with IBM, and addressing the cybersecurity risk, since it was a brand new project, was easier, and also using all the services that the LFE brought to us, being like the neutral ground where we could commit and work. That really helped on the cybersecurity side to lower maybe some objection internally, so it really helped. And right now we're trying to bring a second project right now. We're not there yet, but we'll probably also bring some vendors like Savoir-Faire Linux to give us a hand on that and step forward. So.
And I think also, I think one thing is it's challenging. Cybersecurity is challenging in the broader sense. If it's open source or closed source, it's something. It's never guaranteed. You have to put effort in it, invest in it. That applies for all software, but also open source software. So it's great what you mentioned is to get the help in there from an organization which has experience in that. And the good thing is it's not a question if open source can be applied in mission critical environments, because you have tons of research that show that 95% of the organization use open source in mission critical environments. So that's a fact. It's already done, and the cars we drive every day contains open source software. The rockets we send to the moon contains open source software. Even our SCADA systems contains open source software. So there's a lot of knowledge out there which can help to do this in a way that's secure. And also foundations like Elf Energy and other foundations like OpenSF provides great tools and best practices we can adopt. But I think one step before using open source, there's also this, and I think this is an important one, especially in our industry, there's also a lot of misunderstanding about open source. There's still many people, probably not the ones who are in the room, but maybe the people who are not here, see open source as something more risky than a non-open source software. Or see something, open source software is something which is only is not used in an organization like ours, or at least not in the mission critical part. There's a lot of misconception there. So I think it's also a role for people like us and OSPOs like us to address that misconception, to teach our organization is that there's open source is used in many of this situation, many organizations, also ours, and there's also many ways to do that in a way we address those concerns and security matters in a good and controllable manner.
Just a 10-second tips. Always say when this question of cybersecurity for open source is a question, just remember to your stakeholders that there is a code base average 90% of open source in closed source.
Thank you for the 10-second tip. We do have a closing question. I'm going to ask you guys, think about it, not answer, because due to the time, I want to go to the Q&A immediately. If you want to know more, ask the answer afterwards personally to them. So I want to think about, imagine that your OSPO team just won an award for the most unexpected innovation in energy open source. What do you think it would be for? And then the rest of the time I would like to use for the Q&A. Are there any questions regarding OSPO teams?
Well, actually, to that question you just asked, OSPOs, the role that you play, I hear, is very much about helping your organisations adopt, deploy and benefit from open source, and to some extent create and contribute to it. Now, you have developed something internally. It's the most wonderful thing. It's going open source. What impediments in the energy industry do you have from your C-suite or others about allowing something that they might see proprietary value or IP rights being risked or threatened or patents or other things in deploying that as an open source project, taking it out of your organization and putting it into the competitive field? So outbound rather than inbound transmission of software.
So, like from the discussions that I had within the company, like we're not a software company, and most of our, well, not the retail part, but especially the operators, desperately understand that, and a lot of them are looking for that. And Sebastian mentioned that like we're an operator. We don't do software for the sake of it. We do it because we need to. And so there is no necessary competition on that field in between the operators. And on top of that, we are regulated monopolies. Like there is literally no competition, period. And once you understand that point, like as an organization, within the enterprise in the industry, it gets easier to explain why you should do open source, because you then collaborate with others. They are not your competitors. Like it's not AWS, Microsoft Azure, and Google Cloud. And even they develop Linux together. They develop Kubernetes together. But like leaving that part out, like it's easier to understand for a lot of them that like we don't do software, we're not competitors. Just please start collaborating. And we did that 40 years ago on the electrical engineering part. We just put that into a different kind of sphere now, which is software.
And on my side, on the research center, we were able to prove that IP, it's not valuable for us. You know, we do have some libraries and optimization stuff, and we're maybe making like 2 million a year for the revenue for that. But if we implant the technology we're going through, then we can have like hundreds of millions in revenue in the business optimizing stuff. So we were able to do the use case for the research center, and we're changing the mentality of our upper management in that, because the value is really to implement those software. So.
I think we just ran out of time. If there are any more questions, please reach out to them, because they can share everything and they want to share it as well. Thank you guys for being here today, and thank you for sharing everything with us.
Thank you.